So makes instead of a 17-hour flight.
Alrighty,
now,
guys, you all hear me there on the
just
screen?
Talk to you later, Ben.
We're good.
Okay,
go
guys,
ahead and go to full screen.
I think we're gonna get going here.
Yeah.
It's about 10 after, so welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday. Once again, a really exciting edition of Tech Talk Tuesday this weekend, or this week. We're here in the shop of Porsche Center, Vancouver, and we have past president Joel Parker here with us.
Hey there, thanks for joining us.
And we've got general manager of Porsche Center, Vancouver, Jeremy Shaw with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
And our parts manager at Porsche Center, Vancouver, Rob Finley.
Hi guys, thanks for coming out.
Yeah. So you guys may remember last spring when we started doing Tech Talk Tuesdays that we had Jeremy and actually Sean Robinson on from Porsche Center in the classic restoration division here. And they have been working on this 1977 911S, which is going to be turned into a rally specific, era specific rally Porsche. So Jeremy, we talked a little bit about it last year when you guys had just kind of got into this. The first thing of all is where did the car come from, and like, was it donated, or how did you guys get your hands on the car?
Yeah, so we were looking for a challenging project. We kind of had this in mind of building a tribute to the safari cars, and it came up. We just put our the word out to some of the brokers and whatnot that we were looking for a car that had a clean body, but that needed some substantial mechanical work. So, and what we found is we did have someone from North Van that had been offered this car, but he's like, it was more, the interior was pretty ratty. It had been driven a lot, but it had no corrosion, very little corrosion for a 77. And we sort of isolated it that we wanted to pick something that hadn't been done in the Porsche Challenge either. So the 2.7 super overlooked people. So there was some value for us too, that we didn't have to break the banks. We knew we were going to spend a lot on the restoration. So we found one that was pretty clean, but that would be a real challenge for our classic technical team. So they'd really get to take one apart.
And being a 77 S, that was the first year that the frames were actually galvanized, correct? And so did that help this project?
For sure. Even if you were to pull a 76 with similar mileage, you would have seen a lot more corrosion in seams, hidden corrosion, stuff that's harder to find. So, like I say, the galvanization makes a huge difference. Difference. It is a West Coast car, so we're lucky that way. This car originated in California, has been in BC for more than 20 years. But the only real signs of corrosion, I'll maybe point them out a little bit later, was a little bit around the windows, around the rear window, or a little bit around the sunroof, and a little bit around the windscreen. But underneath, it was really quite good, given it's 44 years old.
Right on. So the original, as you mentioned, this project came about because of the Porsche Classic Restoration Challenge, and this was between dealerships, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah. So 2019 was the first year of it. It was introduced by Mark, the CEO and president of Porsche Canada. So he came from France, where they had actually done it there. So he joined Porsche about 3 years ago and launched the program. So the first year we didn't quite know what to expect. We restored a 89 that in 964 that was very clean, but needed freshening. And then when we went to Mount Tremblant, where they revealed everything, there was, the winner had put 2,500 hours in his 356's body alone. So we're like, we're in a different league, and we know what we're capable of. So we wanted a bigger challenge ourselves.
Cool. So the original car, the 90s, the 77S, it had 160 horsepower. So when you guys get this car and you look at it and you start planning, okay, we want to make a safari car, what are the big things that you know that you're going to have to do to the car? I mean, obviously power, suspension and stuff, but how do you start to prioritize and put a project like this together as far as research and then just formulating a process to go forward?
Well, the straight answer, it was like opening Pandora's box, right? Once you start, you sort of have an idea of what you want to do. We wanted to increase output. We wanted to make sure it was reliable. Obviously, suspension and handling is pretty key for it. So, we built a preliminary budget and we blew through that pretty quick. Not going to lie.
It's funny how that happens.
Yeah, it happens. It's like you're renovating a home or restoring a car. No matter what, you only show half the receipts to your spouse. But yeah, so for us, we wanted it to be reliable was the primary, and we wanted it to be capable and to be able to go on BC back roads. It's not an off-road car, but it's a car that you could take for a run on gravel roads. We've got some really purpose-built suspension behind it, and yeah, we'll go through some more of it. But
right on. So right here we have the engine out of the car, and obviously to take a street going 911 and make it a safari car, the power is the big thing. I mean, you're going to have bigger tires, heavier suspension. The car overall is going to be a little bit heavier, and of course you want the power to be able to propel those that heavier car and have the performance on the dirt that you're after. So let's just look at the engine and just tell us kind of the process that you guys went through with this engine, from removing it from the car and then what went into it and so on and so forth.
Sure. So, when we tore it down, there's signs of wear throughout. It has 168,000 miles on this car. So it wasn't, it was a low mileage survivor. We were fortunate in that the core of it was solid. The case was still quite good. Anyone that may know this engine, the heat exchangers caused excessive heat originally, but it had been switched out to headers early in its life. So that with a magnesium case could cause warping and deforming of the original case. So our case was really good. Once we established that, we knew we could kind of work with it. We removed cylinders. We actually sent them down to Ebbs Racing in Reno. We had them replated and re-crosshatched and cleaned up. I wish I could show them to you here easily, but they just look mint. Maybe even you could share the link of some of the before and after photos that I had sent you. Similar story with the heads. We had those machined locally. The case we had machined. Sean very meticulously balanced the engine, measuring every gram of ring, piston, and rod. So it's a really well-balanced engine. For pistons, we did upgrade from factory. So we went with a forged piston that's a 9.5 to 1 compression ratio, so we can up the compression of the engine. Kind of looking at how we'll tune it. Like you say, originally the engine was about 160 horsepower. We're not going to create gobs more power, but we expect we'll get our output into about the 180 horsepower range. We had toyed with the idea. We like from a look point of view, we love going with Webers and velocity stacks was sort of something we had talked about doing. From a reliability point of view and wanting to drive in the winter and at elevation, we just decided that to go CIS and tune it correctly. And there is actually, if you read the forums, you read through whether it's PCA or even like the Pelican forums, this is the way to kind of set it up to be most reliable and drivable. Obviously, if you look a little bit below here, we've got our new heat exchangers and exhaust manifold. So that is a performance heat exchanger. Everything's stainless. We wanted it to really stand up to all sorts of weather. If whoever eventually owns this car, they want to run it to Whistler in the winter. There's salt and whatnot, but these are ceramic plated, not ceramic coated. So they should look like this 10 years from now, even with regular driving. We did the same with the exhaust. So let it breathe a little bit better, and that's where we'll get some of our horsepower gains.
We've got the beautiful engine up top here, but down here, this is stuff that came out of the car?
Yeah, that wiring harness didn't survive. Yeah, we've got there's definitely, if you we'll show you some boxes of the dead things that didn't make it. But we tried best as we could to refurbish. There's a lot here that looks new, but that's refurbished for sure. And I think when we look at some of the chassis and whatnot, we'll go through that with you.
What was when you take apart an engine like this and refurbish it, was, like you said, it went pretty well. A lot of this is still original parts. You said the heads and the casing and stuff. What was the biggest challenges? What did you guys run into with the engine? Anything that was any kind of problem or the biggest challenge to bring it back to life?
I suppose it was just everything was more worn than we expected. And Sean, who I think a lot of you have met or may recall, he's a gold master tech and he's a gold classic tech. So his, I guess his meticulous nature means things have to be perfect. So all of the bearing tolerances, everything. There was a while there when we had already sent stuff out and we're getting measurements and tolerance measurements, and we're like, okay, is this case going to make it? Everything from like the oil squirters, could we actually get them out to have everything functioning properly? But thankfully, he's got a really good connection in the machine shop or in the machining world, and they did a fabulous job. And we're able to, just with an updated bearings and whatnot, was able to get it. So it's really better than it was out of the factory. Maybe don't tell anyone from Stuttgart that.
And Rob, just a quick question for you. So I imagine most of this is Porsche genuine parts, and like you said, you had some pistons put in and stuff. So when Porsche comes to you with a project like this, what's the balance between stuff that Porsche can supply for you and stuff you got to go outside and research and just to make the project correct?
Yeah, we always look to go genuine first and see what we've got. Look over here. So, but there's definitely some points where, as a team, we had discussed what kind of options we want to go outside, because this project's a little painting outside the lines. Obviously, we're not keeping it factory correct. We're going with the Safari, so already the suspension, there's going to be changes there. We're going with the off-road suspension, those sort of things. So for sure, sometimes when there was some upgrades, like the shifter was one, we went with the Weibo shifter. There was some things like that where we made some small changes because the nature of what we're driving for towards the end. So, but generally speaking, like the sourcing the parts from Porsche is pretty good. Like for a 77, we can get quite an amazing array of the original parts.
So from the engine, let's move over to what's going to carry this car, and we'll look at some of the suspension parts here that you have, and we'll just so what did you guys have to go to as far as the suspension to have the off-road capability as well as the strength, and how much of it is somewhat stock Porsche, and how much did you have to go out aftermarket to build what you want to make?
Yeah, so suspension will be fully aftermarket. Fully aftermarket. We have a really awesome PCA member from Atlanta named Lay Keen. If anyone is into safari cars, he's built the Keen project, so he's built 20 of these safaris. He used to be a driver for Brumos, so he's got a tight relationship with MCS. So this is really cool. They don't sell these, but it's basically he was kind of intrigued about our classic challenge, so he agreed to sell us a set. And so instead of going, you could actually set these up to go with the factory torsion bars, but we decided to go with a full adjustable coilover set. It's total jewelry. I'll give you the mic. I'll just hold it up. I don't know, Joel, if you can see this. So MCS, the Keen project, even with his little, no one will see this except you guys, because once it's in the car, they're locked away. But there are people certainly do rally these cars. It is a bit of a subculture within Porsche. Some of the purists might not like it, but just feel it fits with the Pacific Northwest.
Well, it 100% is part of Porsche's heritage. I mean, you look at back in the 70s when you had the, the 73 RS, and then I think 76 was when they started racing Dakar. Is that correct?
Actually, yeah. So 76 was Dakar, but they were rallying 911s from 73 on. Right.
So, like, I mean, I remember being a kid and being a sports car guy. You love seeing the Porsche race cars, but then you see these videos of these things tearing through the bush and coming around corners sideways and spitting dirt and stuff. And, like you say, not every Porsche purist is into the rally scene, but it is a big part of where Porsche came from.
Yeah, exactly. And there's things that we can do. We talked about the engine. Some things that you won't see yet is, we're putting a limited slip diff in it so that it'll handle loose surfaces better. Engine or the transmission, we're re-gearing it because we had to replace our gears and synchros anyway. So we're gearing it just to be able to handle a slightly bigger tire than what would have been from factory. So,
So yeah, like after the suspension, let's talk about the tire that's going to carry this beast. So what do we have here as far as the size and trend or tread?
Yeah, so we've got original Fuchs alloys that we had. I got to give a shout out to Greens Auto that did the paint and refurbishing of these, did a fantastic job. And then we've gone with just the tried and true BFG all-terrain in a 215, 215/65 16. So rotational weight, heavier than a street tire for sure. But it'll turn them for sure.
Right on. So that's basically almost like a truck tire.
Totally is.
Yeah.
And that was, we talked to again, we get an advice from the master that's building Safaris in Atlanta, and he said just go BFG. It is a lighter tire than some of the other. I believe it's a 4-ply or 6-ply. 6-ply. Yeah. So a lot of truck guys here would probably put 10 plies on, so save a bit of weight, but still will be a heavy wheel tire package.
Cool. And here's the exhaust.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of looking a little bit more like the performance style exhaust as opposed to what would have been factory on the car. It is a performance exhaust, especially when paired in with our exhaust manifolds and heat exchangers. It'll just breathe a little easier, have a little bit more rumble.
So obviously a big part of a project like this is the bodywork itself. So you guys take over a 77 S model, and I mean, this looks to us like a brand new Porsche body sitting here on the dolly. It's absolutely beautiful, but there were issues with this body when you guys got the car. So if you could just walk us through the bodywork and the issues that you did have.
Sure. So like I say, it is a rust-free body. It does, you'll note from a 77, it does have the Carrera wide fenders on it. We had looked at a few candidates and a lot of people did do that. And there's we looked at a lot of Bondo and rivets. These were welded in and it's all steel. So again, if you look at some of the original photos when it's completely stripped, they were quite well done. We think they were done in California originally. We had to address just corrosion, very standard corrosion where you'd see in the back window, up in both sides of the sunroof. So they're able to braze those and kind of fill them. We wanted to not have minimal filler and consistent paint depth throughout because they'll measure that. We kind of missed the zone. We measured around, but we missed it. It had a hit in the left rear corner, and there was probably about, half an inch of Bondo there. So they spent probably almost the most time on this left rear taillight, pulling that out, doing a bit of filling, wanting the body lines to be very, very perfect. So he did a great job. There was lots of areas we wanted to reinforce it too, to handle that suspension. So we put in a rally style strut tower support. So those are welded in. Found a few areas, and this is debatable whether the welds we were fixing were original or slight repair from this. So we fixed up some of the areas where we felt would just help with chassis rigidity. Of course, we decided how could you not put a ducktail on it? Yeah, exactly. So our look, again, with having the Carrera, it is that 2.7 RS look. It's sort of the look we're going, combining that with Safari. Generally, we did before it was painted. You see, they did not an undercoat, but a underbody sealer and basically like a protective coating, so it'll stand up to gravel and whatnot. Once it's all done too, it's going to be wrapped in Expel.
Who did the bodywork for you?
Bodywork was all done by AutoMind Collision on 10th Ave. They are one of our 3 Porsche certified shops in the city, and they were gracious enough to take on this project with us. It took longer. Obviously, lots of things happened. We tore this car down in January and delivered them the body in February, and then March COVID happened, and so just labor for all of us was a challenge throughout the year. So, but yeah, we got her done, and they did an amazing job. A few other big things, if you'll see the before and afters, probably won't be able to see it here, Joel, but it had an aftermarket air conditioner that was installed and removed. We never saw the air conditioner. We just saw about a 8x8 hole in the firewall. So repaired that. I'll just go around. Repaired that through just in the firewall. The car had a hit in the front, so we made sure put it on the frame aligner, made sure everything was aligned within specification. So, when it started, I think our tolerance was out by about 1.5 inches left to right, and now we're within mils. So they do have a nice frame aligner and the know how to do it. So.
And you mentioned with planning this project and then January, February, and COVID hitting. So is this still part of the Porsche Classic Restoration Challenge? When will that competition take place? And obviously it's been delayed by COVID, but where's that sit? Yeah,
so originally when we started the project, we were to be done by July 1st, 2020. And then, we've been pretty lucky in BC that we didn't face the same lockdowns they did in the East. So early on, they said they were going to extend it. And originally there was supposed to be Destination Porsche, a big event planned with PCA at Area 27. That was supposed to be last September, where they would actually have the contest. Obviously, all that was canceled. They extended it basically a full year and have now given us until the end of June. Just because, again, depending on the market, you had laid off technicians, you had body shops. It was just, we had other priorities. So this car did kind of sit still for probably almost 6 months. But we're now at a point where we thought it was great to have you guys in and show you an update now, where you could look at each individual sort of section, and then we'll bring you back when it's back together.
Yeah, no, we totally appreciate it. I know there was a lot of interest when we talked to you guys in the spring last year, and you guys were talking about a little bit about Porsche Classic Restoration as the departments and Sean's experience going through and becoming a gold technician there. So it's pretty cool to actually come into the shop and see this thing, and we definitely want to work to the point where we can get our PCA members back into an in-person venue like this, like we used to do. But who knows when that'll happen, but this is a step forward to be able to come in and actually look at the car. When you guys assemble this, I take it won't be a totally normal 911 interior, like we're going to be talking roll bars and whatnot.
We've actually opted to not roll bar it, to maintain the rear seats. Okay. It's not a competition car as much as it is a tribute to Rally. We do have a couple of prospective buyers on the car, like people that have expressed interest in it, and I've talked to them about it. And I don't think it'll be a competition car. It's cage is something you can put in, but just decided to keep it a bit of function that way. Yeah,
very cool. And speaking of the interior, and I think that's cool. So it'll just be for a prospective buyer, it'll be a car that they can take out on the local gravel roads and kick up some dirt and stuff. And like you say, not so much.
To be honest, I've blown our budgets so severely, they might make me buy it. And I got 2 young boys, so I got to make sure that I can put them in the back seats. My wife might make me live in it then too when I bring it home with a surprise.
Speaking of the interior, you do have the seats over here, or one of the seats anyway, and the steering wheel and a brand new dashboard from Stuttgart. So we'll just look at some of the interior. You can kind of take us through what's going into this car. And you explained to us that the plaid is actually a genuine Porsche material now. And just take us through that.
Yeah, so this particular tartan fabric is actually available through Exclusive. Now the challenge is Exclusive, where they do all the exclusive optioning in Zuffenhausen. They don't like to sell this necessarily, but we got our hands on a roll. So I've only seen it in 2 other cars. I saw it in a 997 GT2, and I've seen it in another 993, whether or not that was original or not, but just looks so Pacific Northwest, right? Like this looks like it's Johnny Canuck. So that we kind of like that. And with the accents that'll be on the car, we're using Irish green accents in place, you know, like you just to sort of picture what your 73 RS.
So the car is going to be white with green accents? Or
That's right. So we got green, you know, we got the Irish green centers on our wheels. A few little things here, like the cover on the engine, again, painted to match. Well, it'll be deckled across the lower bit with Irish green, and then a little bit like door pulls. We're going with, we've got actual RS door panels. So do that. You can see this is where we came from. It was a whole lot of beige. If any PCA member has, no offense, but we had to get rid of this. It was just rotten. We found literal hornet's nest in the headliner as well. So this is
So this was the car. This is the old interior.
yeah. So we, again, you can just see there's lots of bits and bobs. All the seals obviously have to be replaced. You know, we've kind of, it'll be as good as new.
Right on. And we have a steering wheel here.
Some awesome stuff with Porsche Classic now too, because they're adding parts every month. For this vintage, you know, you can actually have a selection of steering wheels. So we went with like a sport competition wheel. We could have went with a wood wheel. We just felt with the other black leather accents, this was sort of had the best look. Be able to get an original dash again this is out of the Porsche Classic catalog. So it's vinyl, which would have been period correct. And then I should mention too, because we do have, I won't say like support from a lot of our really good suppliers. So the seats and interior will all be done by Pacific Auto Trim. So they did a nice job recovering and refoaming. So they repaired the foam. We didn't put all new foams in, so they are the original seats.
So yeah, this is my next question. These are the original seats. So you guys just repadded them and reupholstered them and.
Yeah, beefed up all the bolsters and whatnot, because they were, you know, this is the driver's side, so it was definitely pretty worn out.
When you start to assemble the interior and mating all the car together, for electronics and wire harnesses, and maybe Rob can talk about this a little bit too, is it pretty much stock wiring, or is there new stuff on the car electronically, any new sensors, anything that you got to integrate into an older car like this? Like, is the wiring pretty standard?
You can talk about the harness and then.
Yeah, the wiring's going back in is going to be the same. Basically, like a main harness will be new, and then a lot of the switches and those sort of things where we need to replace them just because they're worn out or damaged or anything like that. But for the most part, that's all just going to be sticking to the standard stuff, just depending on what we can reuse, what's like in good condition, and what we need to replace. So
the only things that change really is we are putting a different fuse block in, so we are going aftermarket, just to give us a bit more space, just for simplicity's sake. Actually, we will put some driving lights in the front, And then I guess just on the stereo, we're gonna put a Porsche Classic radio in it, so the car will have nav and CarPlay, which is pretty cool. I don't know if you guys have seen what Classics now released their updated single DIN, so it'll have a nav screen, CarPlay, and Bluetooth in the 77. But bonus points with Porsche Canada in there because it is a classic radio. They have it in a double DIN now too, which is pretty
It's very cool. It's got the vintage look to it with two knobs, but fully digital Bluetooth unit. And how are you seeing that with classic cars? I mean, I know the CarPlay and that is now available for many cars, like my old 944. I believe I could bring it in and do it. Is that are you guys seeing a lot of that with classic cars here?
Well, 100%. Like this is the second generation of the stereo. The first generation we had completely sold out. And it's probably one of our most popular classic upgrades because it's sort of it's what people want, that little bit of technology, but it really blends in. It'll blend right into the dash. It won't look like some aftermarket head unit. And then, like you see, the double DIN, like the double size ones where you got a full size nav screen. Oh yeah, 996 now has the double DIN as well. So. Yeah.
Right on. For anybody that has like a classic 911 air-cooled car from 70s, 80s, or mid 90s, what is it? What's the average cost to get that put into your car? And do you figure?
I think you're probably like for the single DIN, you're probably about $2,000 installed. Yeah. So yeah.
Right on.
It just depends on what wiring's in there. Has it been well taken care of? Like, was it taken out cleanly? Because sometimes we've seen where people have sort of hacked the wiring and put the aftermarket radios in the past. So,
we've seen quite a lot of that, of getting rid of an old aftermarket. They might not even have the original, and putting that in. So you spend a bit more time wiring. The head unit itself is about $1,200 around there.
Yeah, it's like 14, and then about 2.5 hours to put it in. So, and then there's, depending if you've got an amplifier, there's might be an extra cable for about $30 or $60 depending.
Very cool. And while we're on the topic of classic restoration, let's just talk about that a little bit that you guys are doing at Porsche here in Porsche Center, Vancouver. This is a relatively new business venture for Porsche in their dealerships to have an actual classic restoration department. And I know you guys do it here in Vancouver. Who else does it in Canada? And how, like, is it, I know it's going across dealerships everywhere, but just tell us a little bit about that program.
Sure. There's currently there are it's us and Victoria in BC, and then in Ontario it's Oakville and Pfaff, and then there's Lauson in Montreal. So there's just the 5 of us that have invested in our techs. It's optional to do it. It's pretty comprehensive. Like Sean, to get his level of certification, he would have spent I think a total of 6 weeks, going down. All of that training alternated between California and Atlanta, and it's, in my view, like when we're it's not about the balance sheet, like about how classic isn't all that profitable, to be honest. It's expensive, yeah, but you lose so much efficiency. From a business case, you make more money just doing oil changes, but classic is, I think, really, we do it because we love Porsches and we want them to stay on the road. Sean, spends all of his free time, like we'll text at night about, little things that we've learned about our car, or just different things that we've seen that maybe inspire us. But we do classic because we want these cars to stay on the road. And that's why Porsche, like 70% of any Porsche ever built, is still out there, because this is important to us.
So when you guys take on a project like this, maybe Joel can just get a pan of your shop here. You've got, maybe 10 or 12 cars in here. And then Porsche Classic Restoration Challenge comes on, and you guys get a car like this. So I'm sure the shop is nonstop. I got here about 4 o'clock and there was cars coming and going outside. It was, pretty busy. How in the world do you take a guy like Sean, who I'm sure has his hands full, all your technicians in here, and how do you fit in a project like this, which is not really a revenue maker? It probably will be, like you say, you got prospective buyers, but how does this particular car work into what you have going in at Porsche here?
Yeah, it's a lot of reminding and trying to check our timelines. We get relieved every time they extended the program because we do have like our retail paying customers are priority. Sean's got a lot of knowledge that everyone in our shop wants, right? So we do have 4 classic trained technicians. So we've got a team here. Our team has 23 technicians. We're a pretty big shop. So it is team approach. So like Alan, you'll see in the video, is a real character. We're gonna pull him off, and so just really scheduled 2 weeks straight to get the harness in. Sean will be fitting the transmission and the exhaust manifolds shortly. So they'll each grab a piece of that. Sean really wanted to take control of engine. Andrew's taking care of chassis, and Alan's taking care of all of the dirty work in between. So it's a team. It really is, and just kind of being flexible. They'll put in extra hours, after hours, just to make it happen. Because when we run a big shop with as many clients as we do, people need help, and we got to pull them off and pull them on, pull them off. So that's why it's on this chassis roller, and everything's on tables, so we can kind of move it where we need to.
So obviously we have a body, an engine, a tire, and parts. So I have to assume this is close to reassembly here. How many hours do you ballpark figure do you think you have into this car so far since you've received it?
Try not to.
Maybe you don't want to say.
No.
Maybe you don't want your bosses to know.
Yeah, no, they know. It's all we all put it up to training. We don't put the labor into the cost of the car. My ballpark hours on the car will probably be north of 1,000.
Wow.
Yeah, by the time we add it all up, and especially we're lucky that we had AutoMine get behind us to really do that body as a sponsor. So it makes the project somewhat, realistic from what our investment will be. At the end, it's not about making profit on the car. It's kind of showcase what we're capable of. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know with my project at home with my car, COVID was kind of a blessing in disguise. And I know COVID hit the economy worldwide pretty hard, as well as Porsche. Nobody was immune to that. Did COVID help this project in some, like you say, the timelines got pushed back, and did it kind of help the project, or did it actually hurt the project?
Kind of a mix. Like when we had pulled the engine out in March, if you guys remember, we were just going into that lockdown, and our service appointments basically had dried up. We had carryover work. We had work that we could do. So I just kind of said to these guys, listen, it'll help feed the rest. I'll pay you guys just to focus on getting this engine torn down and figuring out what we need. So almost for, let's say a whole month, but close to a month, they spent doing that, where it actually allowed us to keep 3 more guys busy doing maintenance and other work. So that was good. It actually kind of, and luckily our business recovered pretty quick. We went through 3 months of service, where service is probably running at about 50% capacity just from consumer demand. So some of these projects, we actually went out and sourced some other classic work, some people that we knew that had wanted us to work on their cars that we were having trouble to slot in. So we went through a number of other pretty cool cars. We had a 993 RS that took a lot of time that we took on. We had another 356. We had just a variety of 911s. And it was sort of that classic business that I think a lot of people too realized they weren't going to travel, and they wanted their cars to be tip top. So we've seen a lot. Our classic business actually last year was quite strong. And we kind of gauge it based on the amount of classic parts that we're selling. So it was actually the best ever year for our classic parts and service in 2020.
Very cool. So now I guess the idea is to go forward here with the car, and you were mentioning you were going to put Alan on it for 2 weeks maybe and just go hard at the wiring and stuff. So what's the road going forward here? What's the process and timeline you think that you might be able to get in and fire this thing up?
Yeah, so our goal right now, we're first week of February. We're waiting on a couple more parts for the transmission. I think realistically, this car, its engine will start by the end of March. I think just given some of the timelines of shipments and whatnot, it's our goal to have it fully off and ready to roll by May. And then Porsche has given us till July. So we want to beat that timeline because we want to get out and drive it. You know, we want to take it on the PCA drives. We have some fun film projects that we've got in mind. Yeah. So
it's interesting you mentioned PCA drives, because we have a number of members we actually have a WhatsApp dirt flash drive channel where guys that are interested in the rally stuff we're talking about taking their Cayennes and Macans off-road, and they've ventured out a little bit and had one or two exciting days in some snow and flat tires and stuff. But it's one of our talking with our group going forward, it's one thing we want to integrate this year is actually off-road and gravel road drives with the Macans and Cayennes. Nobody in our group as of yet has a rally car, but this one might be available. But if it gets road ready, will you bring it out with us?
absolutely. I've got some great roads in mind. You know, we'll go to Stave Lake. We'll go up to Squamish Valley. I've done lots of off-roading in my life, my previous life. So I don't know that I would call what we're going to do off-roading. It's sort of soft-roading, but take it out, take in some views. Got a roof rack coming. I've got a nice rooftop tent, you know, maybe even do an overnighter with it. I don't know. The point of this car wasn't for it to be a queen, although it'll live in our showroom for a while. We do want to take it out and get it out amongst the Porsche enthusiasts. That's why we're doing it.
And I want to say to our viewers, if you guys do have questions, obviously I can't see you and hear you, but Joel is managing our chat here, and if there's questions rolling in, Joel, we'll take some, absolutely. And if you guys have questions for Jeremy or Rob about this or anything that's going on here in Classic Restoration, you guys can let them come in via chat there. You got something there, Joel? So Jeff's number one. I was hoping I was get to drive it today. I think that's your car there, isn't it, Joel?
I tried to convince him, he wouldn't do it.
You know, there is a video that I did see, a 997 GT3 rally car on YouTube. They were talking about 5 of Porsche's best rally cars, and there is a GT3, a 997 in there. So that's the big question. Let's just get the elephant out of the room here, because everybody's looking at this and saying, what's this thing going to cost?
It is an elephant in the room. I cannot confirm or deny just yet. There's still a few pieces to go. I don't want to over or under set the expectations. We do expect it'll be north of 100,000.
Oh, I'm quite well. We've heard 3 times in this chat that the budget's been blowing. So
I write off everything after
Yeah.
into service marketing. You know, so it'll be all there in terms of all this jewelry.
Well, like
it's all parts.
a air-cooled 911 from the early 80s in excellent shape is pushing $100,000. So I'd be surprised if this car is not $200,000.
Yeah,
you know,
somewhere in between, likely. Yeah.
What do you think is maybe Rob can answer this now, the value of parts that had to go into this car is, I know it's hard to put a number on it, but I mean, just the shopping of parts from the engine, suspension, tires, interior, the body work was, a lot of work, but what kind of ballpark value are we looking at on this car?
Gosh, I don't even know, because we've broken it up into a bunch of different pieces. We've decided to sort of deal with it as we've been going on with work orders. So I'd be guessing really.
At least
Yeah.
$50,000 worth of Porsche genuine classic parts in here.
That have gone on already.
They've gone on already.
Yeah.
And we still have some stuff.
And we've
like
still got-
glass, lots of trim. And then in the aftermarket, we've got another 20 grand worth of aftermarket accessories and whatnot. We've got a cool roof rack that came from Renline that's going on, some skid plates.
Factory like windshield and the back glass and all the seals just came in. All the sunroof parts just came in. So there's still a bunch of parts to go on it and be built out too. So it's kind of a on the go.
Right on. So the reassembly of a car like this, how do you go forward? I mean, obviously it's some wiring, and then like just walk us through the process of how this car will come about. Like, when does the engine go in? When does the suspension go in? Vice versa.
Yeah, so the next step is to finish our transmission rebuild. At that point, then we'll put our exhaust manifolds back on, and we'll be able to start putting the rear We'll start putting some of the rear suspension in, and it'll all just bolt into an assembly. We'll just get the it's just so easy to work around everything to route the wiring and whatnot now. So finish engine, then you start basically installing the chassis components once your engine's bolted in with the lower cross member and whatnot. So, and then it'll go over to Pacific Auto Trim again to install headliner. You've got carpets. Some of that stuff actually Porsche isn't even really offering, like things like carpet, because there's so much variety in the aftermarket, right to the point that you know, do you want it to be exactly like the original? Or so we don't want to promote the onlines too much, but Sierra Madre and stuff like that, there's actually pretty good sources, lots of sources that way. So.
And when you're designing and building this car, I mean, obviously you guys know a Porsche better than anybody else. But for a Safari build, did you have to go outside and talk to some people? Like, I mean, like Singer just built this beast of a thing. We've seen all splashed all over the internet. And I know this is a completely different entity than what that is. But did you have to do any consulting on how to make a Safari car, you know?
Yeah, it was really Lay Keen. It was the man. So he, again, he's built 20 of them now. His builds, without doing anything to the engine, you send him a G body, your choice, and it's $100 grand. And he'll build you the car, and that's basically suspension tuning. He'll put an LSD in it. But if your engine needs work, it's on top. So, but Lay Keen, because he had the experience, we were able to pick his brain and kind of guide us. So, you know, things like reinforcement of the rear strut towers, whether to go. He's like, well, if you're already broken your budget, go coilover. Don't try to mess around with torsion bars. So it'll perform better. You know, be a bit more tunable. So he's been probably the best free source of advice. But we do what a lot of PCA guys, a lot of time spent on the internet, looking at what options are out there, kind of learning. You know, like I say, that the 2.7 was kind of a challenge for us because it is sort of an somewhat unloved, with the exception of the 2.7 RS. But it was something we sort of felt was unique and appealing to us. So yeah, we learned about how to extract a bit more horsepower out of it, and quite a lot of that was just you know, peer-to-peer, learning from the Porsche club guys that have already done it. So.
Very cool. Yeah, you got some questions there, Joel? So I'll just read out the question in case they didn't hear it. So it's from Valerie Ball's question. What is Porsche Classic Restoration Challenge, and what is it? When is it? Where is it?
Okay, so it's a competition that's put on by Porsche Cars Canada amongst all 19 Canadian dealers. You have to, it is optional. So out of the 19, I think 16 dealers do it. You select a car, and there's a few different categories. So you can do a partial restoration or a full restoration. And then it's categorized by year. So it's pre-1980, and then basically your 964 and 993 is a category, and then now Gen 1 Boxster is considered classic, as well as 996, 944. Oh, sorry, there's a transaxle category as well. And then they grade us on a whole bunch of things, on how much original equipment that we use, you know, judging the level of restoration, and then also in how we document it. So that's why we did the video series, so that we could document it. So if you check out our YouTube channel, we've got 5 parts there that you can see what the car was originally like. Here's Sean grinding the gears, saying, "What the heck did you get me into?" I said, "Oh, you wanted a challenge, so here we go." So I guess the last part is that it's judged by the executive team of Porsche Canada. They had done it with the PCA, I forget, PCA East at Mount Tremblant in 2019. So they will have a festival where they bring all these cars together. And then they have a few different prizes, but the winning car then goes on a tour of the Canadian auto shows. So we go to Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver Auto Show. There's no money, but it's all pride.
Very cool. And you heard Jeremy mention there the YouTube of this car. There is a 5-part, 5-episode YouTube thing. Each episode's about 4 or 5 minutes long. It's really cool. And if you go onto YouTube and search Porsche Classic Restoration Vancouver, you'll see them come up. There's a bunch of stuff that'll come up, but I was able to find all 5 parts on this car so far, and I'm sure there's more to come. We got any more questions there, Joel? Why is the 2.7 unloved? Because there's 4 liters out there.
Yeah, there's more horsepower. No, it just got a bad rap, to be honest, because the engine, actually put out very decent power for its displacement. The reason why I would say it was unloved is particularly the North American ones had to meet California emissions. So they had quite a restrictive heat exchanger set up in them that caused excess heat. So if someone didn't change that out and kind of undo CAFE, it would overheat the magnesium case and would cause the case to warp and crack. So there's a lot of people that bought these cars and got burned by them because they didn't know about that and got stuck. So imagine your case is warped or cracked. You're starting from zero, at least with your engine. So the values of the cars with the 2.7 are a lot less. It's less power too, but it was mainly just the reputation of what, these are the early CAFE cars, basically the early California emissions cars. So could fix it, and luckily, like I say, ours had been switched over to headers. We suspect in the early 80s, so which actually just helped dissipate heat a little bit better. It didn't have a heater in it, so we had to change that, being for BC. So yeah.
Very cool. And you got any other questions there, Joel? Very good question, because so Valerie Ball's question is, what is the difference between a safari car and a rally car? And I was putting this together, I was kind of researching these cars, and there is a slight difference. Do you think, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, the nature of safari, where it was these multi-day stage events, point to point. So you think of a classic, safari style rally is the Dakar. Pre-Dakar, there were other African rallies, and that's where they really kind of first started. They were rallying these cars, throughout the Alps and Europe as well. They kind of, got, I guess, more known throughout the 70s, racing them in Dakar. And if you watch Dakar of that era versus Dakar of now, it's quite different. Versus, when you think of rally racing, it's that time trial racing on off-road courses, and less about endurance. So you could debate it. That's sort of what my opinion, I guess, of the difference between rally and safari is. Yeah.
Very cool. Anything else there, Joel? And there's just one pretty cool example of Porsche Classic Restoration over here in the corner there, and I know a little bit about that car, but I mean, maybe if you can get a shot of the 356 over there, it's just a beautiful little car there, and I know Darcy will love this, but Is this a car you guys have restored, or what is that car there?
We're working in partnership with Number One Collision on that car. It's quite a special 356. What's the year on that one, Rob? Is so 63. Just a beautiful survivor. So they've completed the body work on it. Now it's here for mechanical. So full numbers matching car. We're basically going through some carb tuning. It had a reseal, but just had been sitting for a while. But the owner had bought it at an auction and then is having us, yeah, you might know the story. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say about his car. There's some very unique signatures on the sun visor of that car. So I'll convince him to bring it out to a PCA event one day when it's done. So we've got another beautiful 356 if you're at Porsche Center Vancouver in our service breezeway, which is a car that used to race at Westwood Plateau. So very cool. So we're going through a full mechanical restoration of it. And it might just end up being our 2022 Classic Challenge car. 356 parts are still take a while to procure and source, and especially when you want to keep it all original. So
very cool. Any other questions there, Joel? And aside from classic restoration builds in here, do you guys do, let's just say, a build of modern Porsches? Do people bring your cars? I know there's definitely the aftermarket shops like Turn 3 and Wands and lots of Porsche certified shops, but do you guys get guys that bring modern cars here and say, hey, I want to change this or change that, or build it up here, build it up there?
Yeah, we definitely do. We've got a huge GT clientele. We're one of the biggest, GT dealers in the country. So we do tuning, track setups, things like that. It's maybe not our specialty, but we've got a couple of guys that are really into that, a couple of technicians that are trained on it. So we do. I wouldn't say we're like a full custom shop, even from a restoration shop. Most of our classic work has to do with refurbishment, I would say, more than restoration. But yeah, we know the ins and outs of our GT and sports cars, I think, better than anybody. Yeah, it's an exciting part of our business.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so the question was, what tire is going on here for a latecomer? And we'll just revisit that. But it is a 215/65 R16, so it's 16-inch tire, basically a BF Goodrich all-terrain truck tire.
Yeah, light truck tire, snowflake rated, so we can use it up to see the sky or even just up the North Shore. But I was telling you earlier, we got some advice from the Keen project that tire was actually a little bit lighter, stands up well, rolling resistance is pretty good, not too noisy. So, yeah.
Very cool. Anything else there, Joel? Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here if there's no more questions. But you guys, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you allowing us to come into the shop here, especially with COVID and everything else going on, and you guys running your businesses general, and being a huge sponsor of PCA and always supporting our members and stuff. And of course, lots of our members are customers of your guys, and they all know that you can bring Porsche obviously of any era here and get just about anything done you want. So a huge thank you for letting us come in here, and personally big thank you for letting me play around in a Taycan this afternoon. That was something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put on a sales pitch, but you should all come try the Taycan, and whether you like EV or not, it'll flip a switch about the future. But I've said this before at other PCA events, like, this is our future proofing. We know there'll be a day when we'll all be forced into electric, maybe, but you talk about Porsche, like, whether it's the classic motor oil to keep the cars running the way they should. They're even developing synthetic fuels now because they know that's, like, Porsche lives and dies on the passion that its owners have. So I look forward to hosting the PCA again soon. As soon as we're allowed, we'll be hosting a Cars and Coffee, and we'll have this thing hopefully running. Oh, actually, I hope we're able to do that before this runs, because that'll be 2 months from now. But we'll have you all. Yeah, and you know, I had to do my budget for events, and I put in a healthy budget for Oktoberfest for any of the members that were here for. So I added some money for an Oompa band this year. So hopefully we can celebrate and get back to just socializing and having enjoy fun talking Porsches together.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Again, Tech Talk Tuesday. My name's Darren Batstone. I know we have some of you from the island and outer regions that we invited, and some outside guests here tonight too. So, from Porsche Center Vancouver and the Classic Restoration Division, we can't wait to see this thing. And I mean, I've been staring at it all afternoon. And oh, Joel's got a question. maybe this is a fundraising opportunity. Yeah. But Jeremy, thank you, and please, when this thing fires up, invite us back. And you know, if you're targeting the end of March, April, May, you know, that's when driving season is going to fire up for us. And we definitely want to see this thing. We've talked about it twice now, and just staring at this thing all afternoon, it's just very, very cool.
My plan: the next time you see it, you'll hear it, and that's the goal.
All right, guys, from Tech Talk Tuesday, from Porsche Center Vancouver, thank you, and have a good night, guys. We'll talk to you soon.